And you're not supposed to toast with water, but as I don't drink that much anymore.
How do they know it's water? Maybe it's vodka. Right?
Yeah, true.
Or hand sanitizer, because we're gangster.
That's right. That's how gangster we are. So, Constant, I want to talk about leadership today. Right?
Okay.
And we oftentimes talk about the greatest leaders in the watch industry. And a lot of times names like Nick Hayek Sr. were brought up, Felix Stern certainly as well. But I want to tell a story to our audience about a guy that's a little bit more under the radar, but potentially could be the greatest of all time.
Sure.
And his name is Günter Blümlein.
That's right.
And he kicked ass not only over Jaeger-LeCoultre, not only over IWC, but he basically created the modern Lange Söhne.
That's right, exactly right.
And this guy is such a legend, and I'm so excited about getting involved in this story. So this story, I'm going to preface this by saying this, guys, it's just going to be a long one, right? So I know a lot of you guys watch these videos in your sweatpants or pajamas, like in your basement when your wife is asleep, right? and you can tell her, like, babe, I am watching porn, but I'm watching watch porn.
That's right.
So I'm going to just say that if you're going to be watching this, maybe you might want to grab yourself like some hydration. I'm not that much of a drinker anymore, but if you guys are drinkers, maybe a couple of nice cold beers,
That's
or
right.
pour yourself a little dram of whiskey, and settle down, get super comfortable, get your beloved dog, your sausage dog, if you happen to have the king of dogs.
Oh yeah, one thing, very important thing, I remember to go and pee as well.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, there's a pause function on this as well. Probably we need it too at some point, but anyway, let's get started.
Yes.
So our story starts in 1943 in Germany, in a town called Nuremberg, where young Günter Blümlein is born.
That's right.
Now, what's important about the date 1943 is you're 2 years away from the end of the Second World War.
That's exactly right, yeah.
And in 1943, the tides are turning against Germany.
That's
right,
yeah.
And Nuremberg is getting devastated, right? It's
Absolutely.
getting hammered over and over again by airstrikes because it happens to be one of the centers for German command.
Yeah.
So if you can imagine that Günter Blümlein grows up in basically devastation, right? And what does he do? What does he decide to do as a profession? You know, I feel bad now because I made fun of like engineer, like as an engineer's watch, because okay, my whole thing was like in the context of the 70s, why would you make a watch for an engineer? But in the context of the mid 1940s, one of the best things you could possibly be for your country is an engineer.
That's right.
Especially when your country has been hammered into devastation and you need to rebuild it, right?
That's right.
So that's what he does. He becomes an engineer, right?
But it's crazy, like during the point in time where it was devastated by the Allies, right? You know, Germany. So how did he become a successful engineer, you know?
Well, I mean, I guess that there was, you know, and you can look at countries like Germany, certainly Japan as well. If you look at it, it was following the Second World War, the way in which they rebuilt those countries and then became leaders in technology, leaders in industry, leaders in automobile, you know, after that, right? It's incredible how fast they like rebuilt. And it's something that, you know, you really have to take your hat off and say it's incredibly admirable. I think part of it is there's a motivation for the younger generation to say, okay, you know, we didn't create this situation, but our countries are in abject poverty and true devastation.
Yeah.
And if we don't get our act together, the country will never recover from
That's
this,
right.
right? In a different way, because, you know, obviously we were not involved in any wars, but I kind of feel that's very similar to when Singapore became independent.
That's right, exactly right, yeah.
You know, one of the key things was our first prime minister, Lee Kuan Yew, right? Or I should say our founding father, right? Because I think there was a guy before him, right? He noticed that, or he came to the realization that we didn't have any natural resources, right? So his decision was that there's nothing else we can do. We're going to have to make the people the natural resources.
Exactly.
And we're going to have the highest level of education in the world, because education means financial stability, which means, you know, wealth. And then if you look at Singapore today, now 60 years later, it's incredible, right? It's truly incredible. Okay, so going back to Günter Blümlein, in 1968, he joins a company called Diehl.
Diehl, yes. Diehl,
D-I-E-H-L.
Oh, so that's how you pronounce that, Diehl. I was still wondering, how do I pronounce that? And it's actually the brand that owns Junghans as well, right?
Yes, so it is an industrial kind of giant in Germany, and it happens to own Junghans, right? And Junghans is a cool German watch brand. I think probably the most famous model from there is the Max Bill.
That's right. It's the most Bauhausy team design watch that we have actually seen.
Actually, if you go to the Bauhaus Museum, right, that's the watch that they sell in the gift store. And
Exactly.
I know because I bought one. And it's cool. Like it really is.
It is.
Form follows function, right? So then he works in deal and clearly shows a real, both an affinity and a talent in watches, right? So much so that he gets recruited by another company in 1980, right? So let's stop here for a moment and mention that there's a company called VDO. VDO is making gauges. So back in the day, I had like an old 1976 911 turbo or 930 turbo.
That's
and
cool.
if you look at the gauges, right, it'd say VDO. So they were a huge gauge maker amongst other things in Germany. And they happened to own two watch brands, which they bought in 1978, Jaeger-LeCoultre and IWC.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that actually.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they decided to create a watch department called LMH,
That's
which
right.
stands for?
Le Manufacture Horology.
Very close.
Right.
Les manufactures horlogères.
Horology.
Right, which means the watchmakers, basically.
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
Which is strange also because it's a German company, so I don't know why they're using a French name.
That's right, huh?
Right?
Yeah.
But nonetheless, maybe because, because actually German is spoken IWC because it's on the German side of Switzerland. So I don't know, maybe just to make it sound cool, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's fitting, right?
Les manufactures horlogères.
But you also must understand one thing and why it was why they had basically acquired these two brands is because what happened in the 70s, right? Basically, the watch world was devastated by the quartz crisis. It was the post-quartz crisis.
Exactly. So they probably got a really good deal on these watch brands as well because they're really struggling. Remember that at this point, both brands are struggling. And actually, I think it was in 1972 that Jaeger made a small series of reversos, right? Because the reverso went missing after like the 1940s. From the 50s onwards, there's no reversos. And they only started to make reversos again because our buddy Jacopo Corvo's grandfather, Giorgio Corvo, went to the manufacturer, found new old stock reverso cases, and was like, bro, let's remake these. Let's do something to fight the quartz crisis.
That is another video, I tell you.
So they made those watches, and then after that they stopped, right? So
Yep.
if you can imagine, like there's nothing going on in these manufacturers during this period, except for a focus on integrated bracelet sports chic watches and a lot of focus on quartz.
That's right.
Right. So anyway, VDO buys Jaeger-LeCoultre, it buys IWC, and they're like, okay, we've created LMH. We need to get a young, cool guy to go and run these. And then they found Günter Blümlein. Okay, so Günter Blümlein joins VDO in 1980. Right?
That's right.
He joins
Exactly.
LMH as the head of LMH, and the dude is 38 years old.
38 years old.
Yes. So he's 38 years old, and let's start with IWC, right? So what does he do with IWC to make it a success, right? Oh no, sorry. Let's start, before we go to IWC, I want to talk about Jaeger because he does something incredible.
Okay.
He takes over Jaeger, but Jaeger is in a strange and precarious situation in terms of shareholding. So what does he do? He takes, I guess he borrows a bunch of money, right? And he buys back the 20% that's owned by the local bank, right?
Okay.
Then he buys back the other 25% that's owned by Vacheron Constantin.
That's right, exactly right. So Vacheron actually owns a part of
So
Jaeger.
there was 45% that was owned by other entities outside of LMH. So he buys them back, and then he immediately turns around and he sells 40% to Audemars Piguet, right?
Exactly right.
Which
yeah.
means that he's probably like shored up his like bank account all of a sudden, probably made a little bit of a profit, and he's claimed back 5% more in terms of shareholding,
Exactly.
right? So that means that they probably have 60%, 40% at AP. And this is really an incredible demonstration that he's a great tactical leader and a great businessman as well. And AP is dependent to some degree on JLC because of?
Yeah, because of the movement. They exclusively made movements for Audemars Piguet.
And in particular,
of course, the 1972 Royal Oak, but also a lot of other watches that AP does as well, you know?
But the 1972 Royal Oak, which was using which caliber?
So it's actually using the JLC specially made movement for them. It's a customized movement actually, it's the caliber 920.
Yeah, it was also being used by Vacheron for the 222, but then the 222 kind of vanishes after a while, right? And then it was also being used by Patek for the Nautilus, but eventually becomes a different movement.
Exactly.
But AP continues to use it, right?
For a long time actually.
And in 1978, AP launches the world's thinnest perpetual calendar. Now what's the base caliber of this?
The base caliber, it's the Duby de Pras It's actually a very thin, it's a very impressive movement by Louis Dupras with the perpetual calendar module.
And what's the base caliber?
The base caliber is still
It's
the
exactly the
JLC,
same
yeah,
movement.
920.
So if you think about it, right, they have their two best sellers. The Royal Oak is using that movement, and also the 5548, which
That's
is
right.
their ultra thin perpetual
Yeah.
calendar, is also using that. Then what happens in the 1980s?
1980s.
In 1984, they take that same perpetual calendar movement
They created another.
and they stick it in the Royal Oak.
Yes,
So
that's
there
right.
are three best-selling watches: the Royal Oak, the 5548,
Yeah.
and the Royal Oak Perp Cal are all
insane.
using that movement. So they need that movement.
They
So it
did, they
makes
did.
total sense for AP to be like, you know what? We'll take 40% of that company, right? And kudos to them. So, okay, let's stop for a second here with Jaeger and let's go back to IWC, because I have to go on record and say that Günter Blümlein takes over IWC in 1980 and he proceeds to go on the most epic freaking bull run of technical badassery of probably all time, right?
would
Like,
say
I'm
it's
just going to
all-time
put it out
greatest,
there as all time.
Best watches were created. I mean, in my opinion, the best IWCs that I love was created in this era.
Not just IWC, from the perspective of any brand,
That's
what he achieved in the next, let's say, 20 years is so staggering that almost anything else is like pales in comparison. But let's go through it. Okay, what's the first thing that he does? He has to identify his audience, right? So who's going to be IWC's audience?
Well, I mean, since the engineer was made for the engineers, I guess it's the professionals, right?
His audience is going to be the young guy,
Oh,
right?
okay.
It's not going to be the old boring guy. It's for the new, young, cool guy,
Oh, okay.
right? Now, what's very interesting is if you look at the 70s versus the 80s, what's happening, right? What did we have in the 70s? We had this whole disco era where men had long hair. They were wearing kind of like flowery shirts with big collars.
No, you're like, what?
Yeah, like me, right? But there was more, let's say, gender neutrality in the
Okay.
1970s, if I can just say. And I'm not betting political, I'm just trying to be historic here.
Okay, okay.
So what happens in the 80s?
What
In the
happened
80s, it's all about being an alpha male, right?
Okay.
In the 80s, it's about being a stockbroker, driving a
Oh,
Porsche
okay.
Turbo, right? It's about Arnold Schwarzenegger.
So masculinity
it's about
was-
masculinity
Okay.
comes back,
Okay.
right? And he's like very smart. He's like, I want to become the watch brand for that guy, right?
Okay.
And before we get into the watches, the first thing I want to talk about is the ad campaigns that Günter Blümlein comes out with for IWC in the 1980s. They are epic,
Yeah.
right? Everyone talks about Patek being like potentially the best ad campaign of all time. You never own a Patek. You
Yes.
merely keep it for the next
generation,
generation.
yeah.
It's like, all right, get the violin out, bro. Whatever,
yeah.
right? But if you were gonna have a soundtrack to Günter Blümlein's 1980s ad campaign, it would be fueled by AC/DC. It would be Highway to Hell.
Oh,
it would be Back
okay.
in Black. It would be like, you know,
Oh, that kind-
shoot,
okay.
shoot the
Wow.
thrill, right? It would be like badass, you know, hit you in the gut.
Exciting as well.
You know, red-blooded music,
Okay.
right? So let's look at some of these ads because we're going to put them up for you, right? So this is one that says, almost as complicated as a woman, but on time. But it's not always like kind of a sexist thing. You can see this is an ad for the Aqua Timer, and it says the reason why fish swim with their mouths open, right?
That's cool.
It's awesome, right? Right.
Yeah.
But maybe the simplest and most effective one is this ad right here that says IWC official supplier to men,
yes.
right? Like there's no getting around it. That's like straight in your face. But like the guy in the context of the 1980s, I mean, think about the movies that are out. What's like the biggest movie in the 1980s? Two, I'll give you two. Rambo and Top Gun.
Rambo
right?
came in the 80s?
Yes. Rambo and Top Gun, and also all the Rocky movies as well.
Oh,
right?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
they
yeah.
start in the 70s, but yes, by then, you know, like in
Hey, I'm a 90s kid, man, dude.
exactly. So my point is, when you see official supplier to men, you're like, that's cool, right?
Masculine.
Now the second thing is this: he goes on to invent something that is revolutionary. Okay, and I just want to slow down here because this is really, I think, at the core of his brilliance. He invents technical marketing.
Okay.
So what is technical marketing, Constance?
Oh, okay. So let me get this straight. Technical marketing means it's basically marketing like the technicality of the watch specifications.
Correct. So what you're doing is taking a complication and making it relatable and easy to understand to everyone, right?
Oh.
You know what I mean? And so, for example, like a split-second chronograph, it's normally really hard to understand. It's like, hey, it's got 2 hands and it splits. Oh, right? You know, you can tell a lap time if you want, or if not. You know, like you can do that. You know, so it's like his idea is to make things simple to understand. Also, incidentally, he is a brilliant engineer, remember, because he's working with his technical directors, guys like Kurt Klaus and Richard Habring, to create basically watches that are complicated, but you can't break them, right?
Cool.
Such as the IWC perpetual calendar created by Kurt Klaus that is fully synchronized with just 1 crown, or Richard Habring's split-second chronograph module for the Valjoux 7750.
Yes.
And on that subject, he's also super clever because he's using basically the Valjoux 7750 as his primary weapon of choice. But okay, let's just go through the freaking incredible litany of his achievements during the 20 years that he was overseeing IWC. Okay, so you can't attribute the Porsche design watches to him because that happened before he started. That happened in the same year that Video acquires IWC in 1978. That's the first collab with Porsche, right?
Yeah.
But in 1980, you have the first titanium Porsche design watch.
That's right.
It's the chronograph with the pushers integrated into the case. So, but you know, maybe he even didn't work on that as well because, again, it's 1980, he just came in. But in 1982, you have to give it to him because the Ocean 2000 in titanium drops.
Wow, that's cool. Tell me more about that, man.
Okay, the Ocean 2000 is a watch that, as the name implies, goes down to 2,000 meters in terms of depth resistance.
Okay, so it's a diving watch.
It's a diving watch, but what's the one cool thing about the Ocean 2000? Other diving watches that could go super low, right, had to have a helium escape valve. Why? Because it was believed, okay, incidentally, I think everyone always gets this wrong as well. It's not because you're diving and then helium builds up in your watch, right? What happens is if you're working at depth and you go into these like compressed air chambers, right? Part of what's being fed to you in terms of air has helium in it, and helium molecules are smaller than the oxygen molecules, molecules, and they go inside your watch. Now, IWC's solution was to, IWC's great achievement was to create a diving watch that went to 2,000 meters, but with no helium release valve.
That's crazy.
And how do they do that? So I asked Kurt Klaus this. I was like, hey, Kurt Klaus, when you made this watch in 1982, how did you achieve 2,000 meters of depth resistance with no helium release valve or helium escape valve? And you know what he told me?
No.
Just make it with better quality.
Whoa, that's badass.
I mean, right?
Yeah.
That's like, mic drop. I was like, just make a better watch, motherfucker.
Oh wow,
you know?
Shit, man.
Right?
So basically that watch itself can just go down raw.
It's just made it better tolerances so the helium doesn't get in there to begin with, right?
Wow.
So I thought that was an act of that. So this sets up basically what IWC is going to be all about, right? In 1985, we have the launch of one of the all-time greats in watchmaking, and that is IWC Da Vinci. Constant, tell us about that watch.
So in my opinion, I think the Da Vinci perpetual calendar, it's the one you said with the 1 crown operation. It's the most ingenious perpetual calendar I think out there in that time, and it's revolutionary in that time. But today, I feel it's one of the most iconic perpetual calendars, but it's also one of the most underrated in my own in my opinion. But as I mentioned, going back to 85 with the launch of the reference 3750. It was super cool and revolutionary because it was based on, I don't know whether it's true, the Da Vinci design.
Oh, you mean the case of
the
the
case?
okay,
Yes,
okay,
the
right,
case.
okay,
And then of course you have the legendary Kurt Klaus with the 1 crown operation perpetual calendar, and it's just an insane watch, man.
Okay, so let's go back to like Günter Blümlein and what he's good at, technical marketing, right? So this watch will give you day, date, month, year, 4-digit year, incidentally, which was all new, and moon phase in perpetuity, and all you have to do is adjust everything by 1 crown,
That's right.
So that's really important because in the context of all the perp cals before, dating all the way back to the 1526, right? From Paddock, which we love, they all were using pushers around the case.
We call it the correctors.
And they can only be adjusted in certain positions, meaning if you try to adjust it during the changeover period, usually from let's say 11 p.m. to 3 a.m. or something like that, you would it up beyond like, I mean, Max Buser used to call these watches boomerangs, right? Because they go out to the client would break it and it'd come right back
Oh my
to
God,
you, right?
wow.
You know, and it's true, right?
Okay.
So the brilliance here is that Günter Blümlein, with the genius that is Kurt Klaus, created basically a bomb-proof perpetual calendar. Then he made it also cheaper than all the perpetual
Exactly.
calendars that were on the market as
Exactly,
well.
yeah.
And then it also came with a chronograph because its base caliber was the Valjoux 7750.
That's right, yes.
Right? This is,
Exactly
and
right.
actually it's a beautiful watch. Now he did one better in 1986 because to the iconic design of the Da Vinci, he adds one game-changing material, and that is,
Ceramic.
Dude.
Wait, colored ceramic,
dude,
by the way.
it's so cool, right?
Yeah.
So in the context of 1986, right, he's created basically the first ceramic luxury watch. Yes, we hear you in the back in your basement saying, but Rado had already created ceramic. We get that. Rado had already created ceramic, but Rado watches were, let's say, they were accessible luxury, one step above
Yeah.
utilitarian, you know, but this was a proper luxury watch in a high complication.
High complication,
Right?
exactly right, yeah.
And it's using ceramic. So zirconium oxide, which is also, from what I understand, you know, Rado watches are cast or molded into that shape.
Exactly.
Right? Whereas the zirconium oxide is actually being machined into that, right?
That's
Which is
right.
also
Yeah.
a technology that they had to invest in.
Big
But
difference, huh?
big difference. So, okay, nonetheless, what's really cool is it also not only comes out in black, which is cool, black and gold, right? Two-tone.
There is black and gold, there's a lot of combinations.
There's also white, which we love, right?
Yeah. There's a new reference, by the way, for that. Ceramic, so the original one with gold, it's 3750, and then the one with ceramic is 3755.
Right.
Right, and I think there's less than, class ceramic also, I think there's less than about 200 in production.
Yes.
Back then during the time.
Okay, then in 1990, Günter Blümlein's, you know what, like, I'm gonna make a grand comp, right?
Okay.
So why does he make a grand comp?
It's a resurgence of complication, right? I mean,
Correct. So
yeah.
what happens in 1989?
1989 is where Patek created the most complicated watch, basically, the Caliber 89, right?
Yes. Not only that, but they also released their first automatic minute repeater
Exactly.
as well. And it also comes in a perpetual calendar version as well. So you have now a statement that complicated watchmaking is back. Now, to be fair, we have to give credit where credit is due. You also have to give a big shout out to Jean-Claude Biver because from 1983 to 1992, he's also killing it with the complicated watches as well from
Exactly.
Blancpain,
The
right?
6 masterpieces.
The 6 masterpieces, right? So Günter Blümlein's like, okay, I get it, like brands like Blancpain are making grand comps, right? I get it, like brands like Patek have to be making grand comps because that's who they all are. But IWC, which was considered before I took over to be kind of, how should I put it? Like a tool watch manufacturer, right?
Utilitarian.
Yeah,
basically.
sports, tool,
Professionals.
maybe professionals. Yeah. I'm gonna drop a grand comp as well, right? And so in 1990, he does exactly that. He does a perpetual calendar chronograph minute repeater.
Wow.
Yes.
On which platform?
A Valjoux 7750. Okay,
Amazing.
so one thing that you have to understand also is that, and you'll see this later in the creation of Lange, is that Günter Blümlein is an absolute genius when it comes to taking things and using them in different ways, right? So he has the chronograph and the perpetual calendar already from the Da Vinci.
Exactly, yeah.
So where does he get the minute repeater? He taps the talents of two young dudes named Giulio Papi and
Dominic Renault.
correct, exactly. So he's over at Renault Papi, and he was one of the first ones over there, right? And he is basically speaking to them and saying, listen, guys, I need a minute repeater, but I need a modular minute repeater. So basically, the entire IWC minute repeater is just a module, and you place it on top of it, and boom, you're ready to go, right?
Damn,
So he
okay.
actually, now we are like, oh, sandwich watches are not cool,
yeah.
whatever like that, but actually, this is completely innovative in the context of what he's done. So he's taking the perpetual calendar module, the minute repeater module, and the chronograph base caliber together. He puts them together and he creates a grand comp, and a grand comp that's also priced much more affordably than
Exactly.
the grand comps from the other manufacturers.
Yeah.
So he's showing you like, hey, don't f around. We got grand comps too,
Yeah.
right? Okay. Then in 1993, he does one better.
Okay.
So 1993 is the Jubilee, right? The 100th year anniversary of IWC.
Exactly.
And he creates Il Destriero Scafusia. That's Latin.
Whoa, okay. Okay.
And you know what Il Destriero Scafusia means?
Industrial, is it a left-hand crown watch?
That's destro. Okay.
Destro, oh,
so Scafusia is the Latin word for Schaffhausen,
Yes,
where IWC
exactly.
is based. Il Destriero Scafusia means the war horse of Schaffhausen.
Whoa.
That's a cool name,
That's a
right?
cool name, very
We need to
masculine,
figure out
yeah.
what the warhorse of Singapore is. And we're going to
Why
nickname
do you
that to
choose-
a
why-
consonant is going to be Il Destriero Singapore.
So riding my Singapore donkey or
Yeah,
something.
exactly.
Yeah, but the why is it in Latin instead of
Sound cooler, bro.
Okay, cool.
Right? Because if you say the Warhorse of Schaffhausen, it sounds cool. But if you say Il Destrio Scafusia,
it does sound
that sounds
more,
really
badass,
cool, right?
Okay.
So in 1993, he creates a watch that has the following, right? It has perpetual calendar, minute repeater, split-second chronograph,
Oh, okay.
right? And a tourbillon,
Wow.
right? And what's the base caliber?
7750.
It's a Valjoux 7750. It's so
Shit.
badass. But
Damn.
the tourbillon that's used in this watch is a tourbillon using a titanium cage.
That's cool.
That's insanely cool.
Is it a world
right?
premiere?
I wrote an article about this and I said it was a world premiere, but then I was confused because there was some confusion because there might have been some titanium used in APs,
Okay.
right?
Cool.
But
One of the first.
But yes.
Yeah,
And,
one of the
and certainly the first one to retrofit a titanium cage into a Valjoux 775. That's,
Definitely.
But can you imagine he's got, and to this day I still think that's one of the coolest watches of all time.
Cool. Wow.
Okay, so we go from, oh no, the other watch I want to talk about is the watch that's on my wrist. So in 1993, he creates a limited edition of Portuguese watches called the Jubilee, right? And that is the reference 5441, and he does it in gold, steel, and platinum, right?
Okay.
And this is a 5441.
This is the original 511?
So I used to have the original one from 1993. But unfortunately, when I was younger, you know, in order to buy my next watch, I had to sell my watch. So then I sold it, and I always missed it. So then later, during the 10th anniversary of Revolution, I approached my buddy George Kern, who at the time was the CEO of IWC, and I said, do you think you can make a special edition of 5441s for Revolution?
So that's what this is. Okay.
And he went into the, what do you call it, customer service department, and he found 10 new old stock cases. And so we made rose gold 5441 with Revolution on the, here.
Whoa.
That's on the ratchet
So
wheel.
this is with the original case.
Yeah, and then check out the ratchet wheel.
Sick, man. Oh, yeah. Wow. That's sick, man.
Thanks, bro. Okay, so let's go from there to 1994. And in 1994, we have an absolute killer of a watch that's dropped. It is the 3705.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So this is Günter Blümlein bringing back the pilot's watch. Now it's cool also because he's also kind of the first guy to be really focused on like pilots, you know, diver, engineers. Sorry.
Masculine
right?
one. I mean,
but
yeah.
all of these like masculine professions, right? And it's kind of unabashedly masculine. So in 1994 he drops the pilot's watches, but amongst those he drops the 3705.
Exactly.
And that is probably one of my favorite IWCs of all time.
yeah.
So tell me what that is, bro.
So basically, it is a we call it a Flieger chronograph because it's actually based. It's a pilot's chronograph, right? I mean, it's called the IWC Pilot's Chrono. The 3705 is also one of the pioneering full ceramic case pilot's watch as well.
Right.
You know, and it's a favorite of many journalists like us, and also of course many others, big collectors that loves IWC. So this is a must-have. And the base caliber for the 3705 is also
A
the
Valjoux
7750. Yes,
exactly.
Exactly.
But it is also made in black ceramic,
Exactly,
right? And this
yes.
is the first time you have a ceramic pilot's watch.
Exactly,
ever made.
yes.
And it's just so cool. And I know Günter Blümlein liked this watch because he offered one to his wife, which was then sold in the same auction when Paul Newman was sold.
Oh
right?
shit, really?
Yeah,
Was it the
I
same
bid on
auction?
it, but unfortunately I didn't win it. I think it was like 50 grand or something like that in
wow.
the end. But I mean, you know,
Not
in
bad.
absolute terms, to own a piece of history that belonged to Günter Blümlein
Yeah.
/ his family is amazing.
Yeah.
But you know, again.
Oh, congrats to the guy that won it anyway.
Exactly. So from there we go to 1995 and we have 3 Portugueses that are launched. We have amongst them a Portuguese minute repeater. So remember that module that I was telling you about, right? They take it off and they put it in there. And you also have the Portuguese split-second chronograph.
Damn.
But we forgot to talk about one of my favorite watches of all time, and that is the Doppel chronograph.
Doppel chronograph.
Right. In 1992, 1 year before the 100th anniversary or jubilee for IWC, Günter Blümlein launches the Doppel chronograph. So what's the Doppel chronograph?
Doppel chronograph. Doppel means 2, right?
Yes.
So it's a retropole?
So it is the split-second chronograph from the Grand Comp is now made its way into a pilot's chronograph, which is a split second.
Wow, that's cool.
And this is an invention by Richard Habring, right? So Habring was working for him, as was Kurt Klaus, and he would like, you know, give different projects to different people. So Richard Habring created a split second, I don't want to say module, so I guess he created a split second version of a Valjoux 7750,
Yeah.
or a split second
It's a version lah, I mean, I guess.
A split-second train that sits on top of a...
Okay, so it's a little bit different, customized.
Right. So one thing that's interesting, again, if you're watching this in your pajamas in your basement late at night, if you want to really nerd out on this stuff, if you look at the spring that attaches the split-second wheel to the chronograph wheel, right? It in very expensive Rattrapants, it's a solid bar. To make it more industrial here, it's a spiral spring, right?
That's cool.
You know, like in a ballpoint pen, you know that spring? It's almost like that, so it's got more elasticity.
Wow.
And it takes less setup, and so it's a little bit more of an industrial approach. Now, we should probably talk about split-second chronographs a little bit at this point as well. Because up until this point, split-second chronographs are notoriously fickle, right? They're like really, really hard to make. In fact, it's always been said that after a minute repeater, the Rattrapant is the most challenging watch to set up.
More complicated than a tourbillon.
But this is the first time that it's been really successfully industrialized. We will also see later a version of the Frederick Piguet 1185 in split-second function as well. That's an amazing movement too. But let's just talk about IWC for now. Okay, so in 1992, he creates a Doppel chronograph and now has a split-second chronograph as well. Think about it from this perspective. He's got a perp cow, right? Perp cow with chronograph.
Exactly.
He's got a minute repeater, right? He's got a split-second chronograph. I mean, he's kind of killing it, you know? And IWC being this brand that is meant to be like appealing to young guys, that's more affordable in terms of the complications, you have to say that their arsenal is totally complete now, right?
That's cool. I mean, Grand Com, but yet making it still accessible to a younger audience it's revolutionary, I think.
Okay, so then 1997, he launches the GST line. So GST represents gold, titanium, and steel. And these are watches that take over from the Porsche design watches, but they also are, from my perspective, very beautiful, right?
Okay.
And they give kind of the case shape and design for the IWC Deep One, which will be launched in 1999. All right, the IWC Deep One in 1999 is one of the most revolutionary watches in that it introduces a board-on tube depth gauge to a diving watch in titanium, which is really cool. So the water enters into the watch, a board-on tube deforms, it's attached to like a cam with a spring and a hand on the dial, and it shows you not only where you are in terms of your depth, it has a memory function to show you your deepest dive as well, which is really cool. There have been, yes, watches with depth gauges in the 60s, but this is...
But never anything like this.
It's really remarkable. But something very interesting happened. LMH is sold to Richemont Group.
Oh yeah, the acquisition.
Yes. LMH is owned by Video,
That's right.
which is owned by a company called Mannesmann.
Yes.
And Mannesmann, the whole group, is bought by Vodafone.
Vodafone, yeah.
Right? So then Vodafone is like, okay, well, let's sell off some of this stuff here because it's not really our bag. And they decide to sell off LMH and they sell it to Richemont Group / Johann Rupert for 2.1 billion Swiss francs, which is 7 times turnover of 300 million Swiss francs. But it turns out to be a great investment. But before we get into that, let's go back to 1980 and when Günter Blümlein takes over LMH and talk about his work with Jaeger-LeCoultre.
That's right.
So we talked about IWC and what Günter Blümlein had done, and that alone for me would make him one of the greatest, if not greatest, legends of the watch industry in terms of leaders. But he's not done yet, right? By a long, shot. By a long shot. So let's talk about Jaeger-LeCoultre, right? So how shall I put it? When he takes over Jaeger in the 1980s, or you know what, let's just call it Jaeger because we're English speaking,
Fine,
right?
yeah.
When he takes over Jaeger in 1980, Jaeger is known for producing movements for others. Right?
Exactly.
So as we discussed, they produce a ton of movements for AP, hence Günter Blümlein's successful sale of 40% of the company to AP because they know they need Jaeger, right? So what does he do with this brand that's primarily known as just like a movement producer, right? It's kind of funny because it reminds me a little bit about the situation that Zenith had as well, right? Because when Zenith came back, it was still kind of known as a movement producer, especially because it produced the movements for,
of course, the Daytona.
The Rolex Daytona all the way up until 1999, right? So Blümlein is like, I need to take this incredible maison, it's called Le Grand Maison because it's the biggest manufacturer in the Vallée des Joux, and it's like, I need to create a brand out of it. And he does so with 2 models. Right? So we mentioned in 1972 that there was the reintroduction for a very brief period of time of the legendary Reverso. Günter Blümlein decides, along with a very important guy, Henri Jean Belmont. So who's that guy?
Henri Jean Belmont.
Henri Jean Belmont is the actual CEO of Jaeger.
Oh.
And from what I understand, also a very brilliant leader as well, right? So who did I hear that from? I heard it from a guy who worked there for 7 years, from 91 to 98, and his name is Max Buser.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And Max Buser credits Henri Jean Belmont with attracting him to come and work at the watch industry, because after he graduated also from engineering school, Max was like, maybe I'll go work for a multinational. And when he went for his interview with Henri Jean Belmont, Belmont told him, do you want to be one of 2,000 working in a big company like that, or do you want to be one of 3, 4, or 5 people that can make a real change, because we are going to rescue JLC.
I remember
right?
this story.
Right.
Yeah, Max
so if he told Max that we are going to rescue JLC, they must have realized that times were dire, right? And from what I understand, which is not really told in the history books, it was about to go bankrupt.
I think so.
Right? Yeah. Jaeger was about to go bankrupt, and so these guys had to somehow come up with something to like kill it, right?
Yeah.
So in 1982, they bring back the Reverso, right?
Cool.
Now, I wouldn't say that this rescues them immediately, but it starts to also create a bit of positive momentum. In 1985, they come out with a Reverso that, for the first time in the history of the watch since 1931, is actually water resistant.
Exactly.
But really, the real impact and power of Blümlein's vision for Jaeger comes in 1991.
Okay.
So what is 1991? It is the 60th anniversary of the Reverso, also known as the Soixantième.
Soixantième, yes.
Yes.
Exactly.
Soixante is 60, so Soixantième is 60th anniversary. And he drops the Soixantième Reverso, which is in an all-new case size. It's called the Grand Taille.
Yeah.
And he goes to show you that the Reverso, which was previously perceived to be a very ornamental kind of watch, even though it was built for sports initially, can also exist with incredible mechanical firepower inside.
Damn, so it was him that actually started this complicated phase of...
So this watch features several cool things, but such as a gold movement, which is really cool. It also features a grand date or big date mechanism.
Yep.
Why is that important? Because the team at Jaeger, which created this big date mechanism, will later go on to be the team that creates the big date mechanism for the Lange 1. Okay? Slow down. Let's not get into Lange yet. Let's stick with Jaeger. Now, you know Günter Blümlein, when he's on a tear, he goes on a tear, right? And in 1991, he drops the Soixantième. In 1993, he drops the Tourbillon.
Yes.
A Tourbillon inside of a Reverso, that's crazy. In 1994, he drops the minute repeater, right? A minute repeater in terms of a Reverso is absolutely nuts, right? And then in 1996, he drops the freaking retrograde chronograph. Now, when you say retrograde chronograph, most people will use a retrograde. So retrograde is when a hand jumps back to 0 after it goes through its run, right? Yep. Most of them would use it maybe for the minute counter or an hour counter. He puts it on the seconds. So that's freaking nuts. That's absolutely nuts, right? And is it 60 seconds or 30 seconds?
30 seconds.
It's 30 seconds, right? This movement, which is the caliber 829, is the first new chronograph movement that's made in the watch industry for decades, right? And freaking Günter Blümlein and his team, right, drop a freaking retrograde seconds chronograph, which from my perspective makes this one of the most important watches of all time. Just putting it out there, I'm going to be in the market for one of these things as well. Then in 1998, he drops the Reverso Geographic, and in 2000, he drops the Reverso Perpetual Calendar. These are collectively known as the Big Six. So this is what he achieves for Jaeger during this period. This is absolutely incredible, and by the time he lands into the transition into the Richemont sale, Jaeger has a real viability for it. But don't forget also, I said 2 models. He also brings back the Master Control. And the Master Control, which also has like a 1,000-hour test in terms of its functionality, is based on the golden age of Jaeger from the 1950s.
I see. Okay, that's where the inspiration of the design comes
from. So you have the rectangular watch, right? And then you have the round watch. And that's his strategy as well. So he's taking his technical marketing and applying it to Jaeger as well, right?
Oh, that's cool.
Now, we said that he's still not over. He kicked ass with Jaeger. He kicked ass with IWC, but then he does something even more incredible. I'm going to get shit for this, but I'm going to put it out there. From my perspective, he basically invents a Lange Söhne.
I agree.
Right?
I agree, because Lange Söhne before 1994 was not as prestigious as what
it was not.
It was.
No, it was a great
brand.
watchmaking brand, but it was not the German Patek.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Okay, so let's get into that. Well, hang on. Maybe you guys want to have a sip of your beverage, because I know this is a long one, guys. Incidentally, if you're in your basement and you feel like loosening your pants or just going clothing optional or whatever, you know, feel free.
Go nude, it's the 80s.
Exactly. Yeah, actually, yes. Right? Okay, so let's get into a Lange Söhne. But before we get into Lange and Günter Blümlein's achievements, I want to tell you the story of Walter Lange.
Okay.
Walter Lange, who I love, had one of the toughest lives up until the age of 66. So let me put it to you this way, right? Walter Lange is born into a watchmaking family in Glashütte. His only ambition is to become a watchmaker. He's one of the most sincere guys in this regard. But what's happening is the Second World War, right? So he gets conscripted and sent to the Russian front, which is probably, there's many bad places to be in the context of the Second World War, but I'm pretty damn sure the Russian front is one of the worst.
One of the worst one, yeah.
So he goes to the Russian front and he gets shot, okay?
Oh shit, he got shot.
So he gets wounded and he comes back to Glashütte and he takes him, I think, the better part of almost a year and a half to convalesce, to heal up. He's so determined to become a watchmaker and work in his family company that he manages to recover, regain all of his watchmaking abilities, and on the day that he's about to go to Lange, this is the day before the Allies have the peace treaty, right?
Oh,
the day before, right, the ceasefire, right, and peace is declared.
Yeah.
The day before that, the Allies bombed the shit out of his manufacturer. Can you imagine? One day before.
Damn.
And it's decimated. Completely decimated.
Shit.
It's now 1945. It's the end of the war. It takes him from 1945 to 1948 to rebuild Lange Söhne.
So 3 years basically. Okay.
And he's working, I mean, he's bootstrapping this, right? You
Yeah.
know, he's just like working like a madman day and night.
Yeah.
And in 1948, he's about to move into Lange Söhne and finally become a watchmaker, but what happens?
The war hasn't started yet.
It is a Cold War.
Cold War?
Yeah, so Germany now has been divided into East Germany and West Germany.
Exactly, yeah.
So the Soviets roll in and they're like, hey, thank you for building this watch manufacturer. It is no longer your manufacturer, it is our watch manufacturer.
Man.
Because what they basically are done is nationalize all the watchmaking into the GUB, right?
Okay. What does GUB stands for?
Something in German. So the GUB stands for this. Okay. So, okay, one really interesting thing is the following, right? In the 1970s, you have the quartz crisis throughout Switzerland. Right?
Exactly.
But Germany, or East Germany, was never affected by this. Why? Because the Soviets never adopted quartz technology. They continue to rely on mechanical watchmaking. Now, this, which initially seems like a terrible situation to be in if you're a watchmaker, ends up being an unexpected benefit in the 1990s when people want to regain watchmaking ability. Because they never lost it, because they continued to be watchmakers. They didn't do complications, but just being at the bench, just making watches, it's still, you keep the skill set alive.
Keep making watches, so they never lost anything, basically. They get better.
Exactly. Okay, let's cut back to Walter Lange. In 1948, he's like about to go into his like watch manufacturer, finally. And these Soviet dudes roll up and they're like, hey, thank you so much, bro. Thank you. Now this is part of the GUB, but we offer you a job.
Okay.
So what do you think Walter Lange says?
Let's see, is he a badass? So he said no.
He, in Cantonese, basically said, nice. Right?
Masculine as hell. Yes.
Yeah, he's like,
no.
He's basically go f yourself.
Okay,
right?
Got it.
And the Soviets said, okay, that's fine. Anyway, we found another job for you. We're sending you to a uranium mine.
What the man, this guy.
Yeah, you're gonna go mine radioactive material. So basically, they're just telling him, now you die, right?
Oh shit, okay.
So what does Walter Lange do? He freaking escapes from East Germany and he goes and settles into West Germany, right? So he's probably, I would say, in his late 20s here, right? So for the next 40 years, right? So he's born in 1924. What's 1948 minus 1924?
26.
28. He's 26. So he's 26 years old. He escapes to West Germany and he basically works in a repair shop for watches. For the next 40 years, bro. For the next 40 years. And can you imagine, every night before he goes to bed, he thinks about his manufacturer, his family name, in Glashütte, not that far away, and he could probably, from where he is, even look into East Germany, and he's like, it will never happen.
Shit, man,
right?
this guy got it hard, man.
But maybe he kept dreaming that one day it might. But when you're 66 years old, you're starting to figure, I don't know if it's going to happen anymore.
Yeah.
But then something crazy happens in 1989. What happens?
With the resurgence, Volkswagen launched the Caliber 89.
You see, he's talking like a watch nerd. Patek launches the Caliber 89 and the Berlin Wall falls.
89,
Yes.
exactly.
So the
sorry.
Berlin Wall falls and you have the reunification in Germany.
Exactly,
Right?
yes.
And suddenly Germany is one country again. That's incredible, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember Ronald Reagan saying, Mr. Brezhnev, tear down this wall?
It's a very interesting story as well.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
So, but what is the first phone call that he receives?
He got a call from Günter Blümlein.
Yes, he's sitting around in his house and going, well, Germany's reunited, but I'm kind of an old guy now, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with my manufacturer. And he gets a call from the biggest badass of watchmaking then, right? And it's Günter Blümlein, and he's like, Walter Lange, let's go get your manufacturer back. Let's rebuild a Lange Söhne. So now, right? Günter Blümlein, Walter Lange, they go back to restore Lange, not just to its former glory, but to exceed it even further.
That's right.
Because, okay, so let's go back to the story. I told you that Günter Blümlein was born in 1943 in Nuremberg. He must have grown up in devastation and poverty.
Got it.
What is the dream of every young man that's an engineer?
To make it. Right,
To rebuild your country. To rebuild your country. Okay, Germany by this point has been rebuilt. But what could he do to add, to contribute to his country, right? He could create a German watchmaking brand at a position that had never existed before.
Wow.
A German watchmaking brand that could rival the Holy Trinity.
Exactly.
Who's the Holy Trinity?
I mean, Patek, Vacheron Constantin, and Audemars Piguet.
To rival the greatest Swiss, AP, VC, and especially
PP.
Patek Philippe,
Yeah.
right? So in 1994, so he has 4 years he does this in 4 years, right? In 4 years' time, with an investment of 20 million euro, and could you imagine that he had probably went to go speak to the guys from LMH or VDO or whoever his bosses were, and like, this is my dream, I want to create this German watch brand. Now, if it was anyone else, they would have been like, Günter Blümlein, that's a great dream, but
Keep dreaming.
no, bro. But they're like, isn't this the guy that just like is on the biggest tear of all time in watchmaking? I mean, he just basically made IWC, which used to be this kind of dusty, anachronistic, nerdy tool watch brand, into one of the hottest watch brands in the world. Isn't he Mr. Official Supplier to Men? We need that dude.
He deserves it, yeah.
I'm a believer, Günter Blümlein.
Yeah.
Do what you want.
Yeah.
We're here with you. They give him the 20 million euro.
Okay.
And in 4 years' time, he relaunches A. Lange Söhne. But with two of the most important watches of all time. Okay, to be fair, he launches 4 watches. We're not trying to diss the Arcade and the Saxonia, right? But the Lange 1 and the Pour le Mérite Tourbillon are such staggering works that to this day, they are 2 of the greatest achievements of all time in watchmaking history.
Yeah.
But let's pause for a second. Because he wants to establish a German watch brand at the same level as Patek.
As the Holy Trinity.
What's number 1 that he's going to do? What's the first thing he's going to focus on?
Movements.
Yes. In-house movements, and how are they going to be finished?
Oh, so no more 7750.
Yes. Yeah. For IWC it's fine, but for Lange, no.
Oh, okay, so it's an in-house.
All
manufactured.
in-house movements, but then finished at a level that's better than anyone else.
Got it.
Right? He starts first with the material of his movements. What are they made from?
It's made from German, right? German silver.
German silver,
Exactly.
Myshore. But more than that, he uses Myshore in a way that no one else is using in the industry. It's untreated German silver.
Yeah, exactly.
Why would you do that? Because as it ages, it becomes this really stunning honey color.
That's right.
It is one of the most beautiful colors
Warm, metallic,
in
silver
watchmaking.
color. It's very
incredible.
unique. It's very
incredible.
unique, definitely.
But what's the problem with untreated German silver?
I don't
It's
know.
super freaking hard,
Oh.
right? To finish, because if you just touch it with the human hand, with one fingerprint, you discolor it forever. It's gone,
no.
right? And so he wants to show you this is how badass we are. We're using untreated German silver, right? Then he's using very German configuration, 3/4 plate.
Exactly.
Balance cock with, it's very old school. It's kind of funny, he's doing kind of a reject, like many, many years before reject did the CC1 because he's intentionally making it old school. He doesn't have to, but in the context of 94, he wants you to think of stuff from the 18th century, right? Or Jorn.
Go back to tradition.
Yes, exactly. So he's using a balance cock with a swan neck regulator in steel, a black polish, and then a hand engraved balance cock as well. Then he's using something that is utterly ridiculous in the context of modern watchmaking, yet it's so cool.
Okay.
Chatons.
Exactly, that's what I want to say. Right? Chatons is super old school as hell.
Bro, chatons were made because it was so imprecise back in the day that you had to be able to move the position of your jewel in case it didn't align with the axis of your pinion.
So now it's aesthetic.
Yes,
it's just aesthetic.
It's pure, but it's so cool.
Yeah, it is
right?
cool. Yeah.
So he's taking every jewel and putting it in a black polished steel sleeve and then fixing it with 3 flame blued screws.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. And then he's finishing these movements with stunning Glashütte waves, right?
I mean, it was also the first watch, I think, that came out in the 90s that has this kind of asymmetrical design. I think this kind of if you look at it, it's like Bauhausy, but it's not really. It's kind of his own language.
I would go so far as to say that from a design perspective, it's probably the most important all-original design in the last 50 plus years.
I would say so, yeah.
Because, okay, he's relaunching Lange Söhne. Okay, he's elevating it to the highest level possible and finishing these movements to a level that when you look at it, men, women, children, and even small dogs will start to cry, right?
Sure.
Just getting teary-eyed even thinking about it. But he's doing it with a design that's completely original.
I think that's
he's not just No, the easy way would have been just going to the old pocket watches or the old chronometers, clocks or whatever, and just done
the easy way out.
Porcelain dial with you know what I'm saying, right? But he went a completely different way and created an all-new design language. And you know, Lange nerds love to talk about how there's a triangle between the pinion of the power reserve, the pinion of the hour minutes, and the center of the frame that divides the grand date. But it's true.
Yeah.
And even though it is asymmetrical, it's fantastically symmetrical at the same time.
Yeah.
So first there's that. Second of all, he takes, remember we talked about the grand date mechanism that's being used in the 60e, right?
829, right?
Yes, so he's like, okay, that's the chrono. So remember we talked about the 60e and the big date mechanism. So he's got the same team from that building the grand date mechanism for the Lange 1.
The iconic grand date.
But it's even bigger in the Lange 1.
It's very big.
It's huge. It's huge.
Yeah, compared to the JLC.
And he's got the perfect marketing narrative. It's like this is inspired by the 5-minute clock in the Dresden Opera House.
Yeah, maybe it is.
Right,
I think it is. Yeah.
It's very beautiful, but he really connects it so beautifully, right? And then this asymmetrical design language is simultaneously like confusing, yet really engaging and harmonious.
So beautiful though.
It's stunning.
Such a harmonic design, even though it's weird and asymmetric.
So there's a bunch of dudes from his own team that are working on this. One of them is Kurt Klaus. So Kurt Klaus worked a lot on the Lange 1 as well, right? And then printed on the Lange 1 are the world's Doppelfederhaus. What does Doppelfederhaus mean?
Is it the manufactured location?
It's twin barrel.
Oh.
So you have a relatively simple watch, but with 2 barrels as well,
Amazing.
Which in the context of the 90s is extremely rare. Bear in mind that the Chopard 1.96 doesn't come out till 2 years later, right? And so a twin barrel, manual wine watch, but still that's really cool, right? So all in, this watch is just incredibly original, stunningly finished. I mean, it's just...
Wow, but the mechanically is insane powerhouse, you know.
You look at it and you're like, wow, that's gorgeous, and you turn it over and you're like, holy crap. And it is, from the perspective of 1994, he's showing you how ambitious he is. And technical marketing, right? Why does he put a Doppelfederhaus on the front? He doesn't have to.
Technical marketing.
Because you can't see that you don't immediately see that it's twin barrel because it's got a 3/4 plate.
You can't even see it, basically. You can't even see it.
So he's telling you, right?
Got it.
Now, let's go to the Pour le Mérite Tourbillon.
Yes,
now, this is what's cool. Before François-Paul Journe does it, before Regjep does it, he's going back to the 18th century in such a big way, right? Because a chain infusé has no rationale for existing for a wristwatch, except for the fact it's so cool.
Yes.
It's so cool. So what is a chain infusé? It's basically like how shall I put it? It's a chain wrapped around the barrel, right? And the other side is around like a cone with like steps for gears, like in a bicycle, you know?
Yeah, so you imagine the bicycle
Yeah,
riding.
so basically as
gear.
torque diminishes, the chain changes position, and it's that cone that engages the gear train,
so
not the
cool.
barrel directly, so it evens out the torque, right? But no one, not even the legendary Philippe Stern, not even Jean-Claude Biver could possibly think of putting a chain and fusee in a wristwatch until Günter Blümlein.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's one of the most iconic inventions for marine chronometers, right?
Exactly.
You know, don't forget that the legendary H4 had, yes, a remontoir d'égalité, and it had a crazy escapement with diamond pallets and something like that, but it had a chain
and fusee, yes.
And pretty
exactly.
much every marine chronometer had a chain and fusee. Why? Because it was just to even out the power, right?
Basically, H4 basically is talking about the John Harrison
Yes,
H4
Harrison's
marine
H4.
chronometer. Yeah.
Okay, so who made the chain and fusee?
I got no idea. Who?
So he goes back to those same guys that are helping him out with Il Destrio Scafuzia with the minute repeater, right?
Oh.
He goes back to Renault and Papi.
Okay.
So he goes back to Renault and Papi, the same guys that helped him out with the minute repeater, and those guys are helping him out with the pour le mérite, and they're helping him out in particular with the chain and fusee
Dude, that's
mechanism,
crazy, man.
in combination with a tourbillon.
But
right?
what's the rationale for him to put the fusee and chain system? You know, it's
I think it's a demonstration of like technical marketing,
Got it,
right?
okay.
Of technical watchmaking, right? With an innovation that no one else had ever done in a wristwatch, and that's super, super hard to do. First, and second of all, when you flip it over, it looks so cool.
cool.
It looks
man.
so
Yeah.
freaking cool.
I've seen a pour le
right?
mérite
You know,
back before.
it's one of the most stunning watches of all time. And
Yeah,
then
man.
this chain of fusees will continue in Lange Söhne, will also appear in the turbograph. But then, 5 years later, in 1999,
Yeah.
Günter Blümlein does something even cooler from my perspective, because my favorite watches are chronographs, right? So in the context of 1999, no one had made an in-house chronograph.
Yes.
No one.
No
No one.
Really no one, yeah.
Zero, nilch, basta, finito. Except for Günter Blümlein, who in the context of Jaeger had already made the caliber 829
Exactly.
in 1996
Yeah.
for the retrograde chronograph in the Reverso, which still makes me think that watch is incredible, right? But only Günter Blümlein can out Blümlein Günter Blümlein.
Yeah,
and in
basically.
1999, he makes probably, I have to say, probably the most beautiful manual wind lateral clutch
Exactly.
column wheel chronograph of all time.
Not just you. I mean, even Philippe Dufour loves that chronograph. He says it's one of the most, one of the best looking and best modern chronographs that's made in the modern world.
So in the context of 1999, all the big brands, let's talk about the Holy Trinity. Well, let's talk about Patek and Vacheron, because
Sure.
AP is not, I don't think it's using it's not making any chronographs
No.
all the time, right? What movement are they making?
So for Patek, with the pretty much same way as the 5070,
Okay.
which was using the one that we love, Le Mans 20,
And Vacheron?
2310, same thing.
So everyone is using the Lemania
2310,
2310, which was created in the 1940s.
Exactly.
Right? So there's no one who's making a stunning laterally coupled column wheel chronograph except for
Günter
Günter
Blümlein.
Blümlein, and he
Yes.
drops the datograph, and that
Exactly.
movement is staggering. And then on
Yeah.
top of that, that movement has a big date,
Exactly.
and then it has something that's just so cool. It has a precise jumping minute counter.
That's right. Something that people don't talk about, by the way.
Exactly. So the precise jumping minute counter is really important as well, because usually when a chronograph, the seconds hand completes one full revolution, the minute counter will kind of stutter before it
Exactly.
goes to the next
Yeah.
minute. And there's a second or so where you're kind of in between. But not with the datograph, because there's a snail cam attached to the chronograph wheel with a lever and a finger, a jeweled finger, and that's what's driving the minute counter. And it can only be precise.
There's only one position.
It can only be 0 or 1,
Yes,
1
exactly.
or 2,
Yeah.
you know, and it drops precisely when the seconds hand makes that full revolution,
Exactly.
and that is really cool. How do we know that's super cool? Because when Patek eventually created their own in-house chronograph movement, the CH27, right? It had
yes,
a
exactly.
precise jumping minute counter.
Yeah.
Exactly. So from my perspective, this is what's really cool. Now we mentioned also that the Soviets never adopted quartz technology, right? So in the GUB are people with still incredible ability who've never forgotten how to make mechanical watches. Two of them are the people responsible for the datograph.
Okay.
One of them is called Annegret Fleischer, and the second one is called Helmut Geyer, right?
Interesting.
But the genius of Günter Blümlein is to see this talent and use them to create something truly spectacular, right? So anyway, as we mentioned, this is coming to the end of the video era. In 1999, Video, as we mentioned, which owns LMH, but is owned by Bannisman, is bought by Vodafone, right? And Vodafone decides to sell the LMH portfolio
to Richmond.
3 brands.
Yeah.
IWC, Jaeger, and Lange.
Lange.
And can you imagine, they must have been thanking Günter Blümlein so much, because in just 5 years, he had created so much value from one brand that he just basically created together with Walter Lange, right? With Lange. So these 3 brands are doing a turnover of 300 million Swiss francs.
That's crazy.
But Johann Rupert decides to buy it for what at the time everyone perceived to be a staggering sum of 2.1 billion Swiss francs.
A lot of money.
Or 7 times turnover. Not profit, turnover.
1999 though.
1999.
It's a lot of money.
So, but even then, right, if you look at it in terms of the decision based on today, it was a brilliant decision. But let's think about also his motivation. By this point, Johann Rupert had, through Alain Dominique Perrin, had reunited Cartier. So he's got Cartier, right? What else does he do in the 1990s? In 1997, he acquires Panerai, right?
Oh yeah, that's right.
That's the reason why he loves Panerai so much. Is Panerai is one of the greatest success stories of all time.
Exactly right.
Because he basically took a brand with a cool history and made it a real like freaking powerhouse in sports watches. In the context of the late 90s and the early 2000s, it was the coolest brand around.
It's priced like luxury as well. Panerai has never been luxury. It's always been like IWC in the past, the utilitarian watch.
Correct, yes.
But now,
and then he positioned as luxury. Maybe a little too luxury from some people's perspective.
Yeah, but it's
anyway.
Yeah, it's okay.
And then on top of that portfolio, he now adds Jaeger, IWC, and Lange. He's got a proper group going on, right?
He has 2 more, so he has a Cartier and he also has Panerai.
Yes.
5.
So I mean, that's a very impressive group.
Not
and
bad.
what the best thing is, none of those brands cannibalize each other, because Blümlein was also very brilliant at keeping them separate, right?
Oh yeah, actually you're right. All of them are very
He didn't keep them separate in the way, like, so in Swatch Group, for example, they're like positioned in terms of pricing where they don't cannibalize, right? But as a result, Longines is kind of like lower price than Omega, which is in some ways, some people feel is a bit of a pity, because Longines was incredible back in the day.
There's a limit now because you can't go past that price point.
Correct. But in Richemont Group, you can see that Jaeger might have a watch that's the same price as an IWC. They might just be touching Lange, right? But what happens is that internal competition is encouraged, right? Now, the sad thing is, of course, in 2001, Blümlein passes away.
Exactly, yeah.
He's 58 years old. He's still in his peak. I mean, the guy is like in full legend mode right now. And if he'd had another decade, imagine what he created. And probably Johann Rupert brought him on board to run the group, right? And then we all know the story about what happens afterwards, who becomes the manager of what brand. But it was really probably one of the greatest tragedies in watchmaking is that the greatest leader, perhaps of all time, was taken prematurely and never had the full opportunity to realize his vision.
Yeah, man.
But nonetheless, what he achieved already in the 20 years that he was at the head of LMH is already staggering.
Yes,
staggering.
It still inspire a lot of those brands today.
Actually, I would say that what he put into place, so we're doing a revolution issue on the greatest leaders of the new millennium. I still included him because even though he passed away in 2001, the legacy of everything that he created in IWC, in Jaeger, and especially in Lange is all in place. And many of the watches that we saw that were being produced over the last 20 years are still watches that he basically designed.
Zygo, I heard that it is based on Günter Blümlein's sketches as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, and also the whole concept of technical marketing is really something.
What are we doing today? Look. It's all technical.
Although I have to say, no one did it as well as Blümlein, right?
Yeah.
So what kind of a person was Günter Blümlein? It was very interesting. I've spoken to a couple of people. One is Jasmina Steele, right?
Oh, yeah.
From Patek, who worked in Jaeger. Another is Max Busser as well. And Max told me an interesting story. So Max left Jaeger in 1998 to go become the CEO of Harry Winston.
Exactly.
So Max's story was interesting because he went from kind of like, wow, this is a dream job, to realizing that Harry Winston was about to go bankrupt as well, right? And he realized that he soon had to create, with almost no resources, watchmaking credibility. And he would, of course, go on to do that with the active genius called Opus, right? But one of the very few people that visited him at the Harry Winston booth in Basel from the previous team that he was in, right, was Günter Blümlein. And Günter Blümlein asked him, how's it going, and Max said, yeah, it's really difficult. And Günter Blümlein told him the following, well, Max, I'm sure it is very difficult, but I say that with total confidence that if there's any person that can do it, it is you. And Max credits Günter Blümlein for giving him the words of encouragement that he needed at that moment to keep going, right? Which is incredible. So he may have been a very strong leader. From what I understand, also, a really good guy, ethical person. Maybe, he didn't believe in democracy. He believed that there is one way and that's the way to go. But maybe the best things are created not necessarily from a collective or a community or a board meeting, but from one person's vision, right?
Exactly, yeah.
But nonetheless, what I like is the way he spoke to Max also demonstrates that he's a kind person as well. So guys, how long has this been going on now?
1 hour 15 minutes.
So guys, that's...
What? 1 hour 50 minutes?
So guys, that's the end of our 1 hour video on the legend of the industry that is Günter Blümlein.
Yes.
It's funny because time has actually flown by for us as well.
Yeah, we're just really having fun talking about this as well.
Exactly.
I learned a lot from Wei as well because, of course, I'm much younger and Günter Blümlein was a legend.
Well, actually, I would say that that's the, if anyone asks me, is there any regret that you have as a watch journalist? I would say that I started in watch journalism probably a year too late or a couple of years too late because I never got to meet him.
I see.
Right? And there's a lot of people in Singapore that know him and love him because he loved Singapore. He worked with Sincere Watch to launch Lange here, had a great partnership with guys like Omban and Taeliam Wee. And as a result, a lot of those guys from the initial kind of Lange collectors group, including Peter Chong and Jaw, they knew him really well and were super impressed by him. But nonetheless, even though I've never met him, I feel like I kind of know him through, especially after this.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to say that it's been a pleasure sharing this with you, Constant, and with our audience out there. And if you like our content, don't forget to
like, share, and comment below.
And now, please feel free to go and pee. Thank you.
All right, see you guys.
Peace.